Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ibrahim Tanner TV. Today, I'm going to talk to y'all about the Claudine Gay situation. There's been a lot of conversation about, is it plagiarism? What's been going on here? And I see a lot of people came down on her because of the accusations of plagiarism, which hasn't been proved yet. But I'm going to give you guys my take, and I'm also going to give you the backstory to what happened. So, Claudine Gay was the president of Harvard. She has the shortest tenure. She was just became president of June 2022, and she has now resigned. She'll still be a part of the faculty, but she has resigned from her president position. This all trickles down from the Hamas attack on Israel from October 7th. 34 student organizations got together and they signed this letter. The letter was a joint statement by Harvard Palestinian solidarity groups on the situation in Palestine. There's actually two letters here. I'm going to read both of them. So it's a joint statement by the Harvard Palestinian solidarity groups on the situation in Palestine. The first letter reads, "We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. Today's events did not occur in a vacuum. For the last 2 decades, millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open-air prison. Israeli officials promised to open the gates of hell, and the massacres in Gaza have already commenced. Palestinians in Gaza have no shelter for refuge and nowhere to escape. In the coming days, Palestinians will be forced to bear the full brunt of Israel violence." That's the first one. And then the second one is, "The apartheid regime is the only one to blame. Israeli's violence has structured every aspect of Palestinian existence for 75 years, from systematized land seizures to routine airstrikes, arbitrary detentions to military checkpoints, and enforced family separation to target killings. Palestinians have been forced to live in a state of death, both slow and sudden. Today, the Palestinian ordeal enters into an uncharted territory. The coming days will require a firm stand against colonial retaliation. We call on the Harvard community to take action to stop the ongoing annihilation of Palestine." Now, the conservative wing had grave issue with this, right? It's like, oh man, y'all going against Zionism, right? And this is their fear of the browning of America, is that everybody won't fold under the pressures of white supremacy. So obviously, Harvard, being one of the oldest institutions in America, one of the oldest white institutions, they reached out to the president and they wanted her to condemn those who they claimed supported the genocide of Israel. And this is what former President Claudine Gay had to say. "As the events of recent days continue to reverberate, let there be no doubt that I condemn the terrorist atrocities perpetuated by Hamas. Such inhumanities is abhorrent whatsoever one's individual views of the origins of long-standing conflicts in the region. Let me also state on this matter as no other that while our students have the right to speak for themselves, no student groups, not even 30 student groups, speak for the Harvard University or its leadership. We will all be well served in such a difficult moment by rhetoric that aims to illuminate and not inflame. And I appeal to all of us in this community of learning to keep this in mind as our conversations continue." That's the letter that Claudine Gay had put out. Now, obviously, there was a lot of people on the right wing and some on the left who was not pleased with that. So they doubled down. Then they had a congressional hearing. In the congressional hearing, they had Harvard President Claudine Gay, MIT President Sally Kornbluth, and former Penn President Amy Goldman. These were Claudine Gay's opening statements.
Thank you for calling this hearing on the critical topic of anti-Semitism. Our community still mourns those brutally murdered during the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel on October 7th. Words fail in the face of such depravity, the deadliest single day for the Jewish community since the horrors of the Holocaust. In the 2 months since the atrocities of October 7th and the subsequent armed conflict and humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we have seen a dramatic and deeply concerning rise in anti-Semitism around the world, in the United States, and on our campuses, including my own. I know many in our Harvard Jewish community are hurting and experiencing grief, fear, and trauma. I have heard from faculty, students, staff, and alumni of incidents of intimidation and harassment. I have seen reckless and thoughtless rhetoric shared in person and online, on campus and off. I have listened to leaders in our Jewish community who are scared and disillusioned. At the same time, I know members of Harvard's Muslim and Arab communities are also hurting. During these past months, the world, our nation, and our campuses have also seen a rise of incidents of Islamophobia. During these difficult days, I have felt the bonds of our community strain. In response, I have sought to confront hate while preserving free expression.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik didn't appreciate her respectful and balanced response or opening statements. And she really turned up the pressure when it was her time to speak. And she grilled all three of the presidents. This is the one she had with Gay.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Notice all the kiki and the ha-ha as they're grilling President Claudine Gay. She's already telling her right now to resign. They haven't even dug in and found any acts of plagiarism. It's basically saying that if there's any student body on campus that doesn't support Zionism, that doesn't agree with Zionism, and that supports the Palestinians, and they're calling for the end of Israel, which may or may not deal in the deaths of a lot of Jews, right? There could be a replacement without any deaths. There could be a peaceful resolution that gives Palestine back their land. They're calling from the end of the state of Israel in Palestine and the end of Zionism. That's not anti-Semitic. And what these white supremacists are saying, like, no. Anybody that doesn't agree with Zionism is anti-Semitic. And it's funny because you have a lot of Jewish people, right, in the Jewish community that don't agree with Zionism. Somehow they jump over all of that. None of that gets addressed. It just goes down. And she's talking about intifada, and these white supremacists have a way with words, right? So here's a Webster definition of intifada. It's an uprising or rebellion. And they say an armed uprising of Palestinians against Israel occupation of the West Bank. Understand, you got to be occupied, right? So what you get from this is they saying whatever Israel does, Palestinians have no right to fight back. They just got to take it, no matter how inhumane the treatment is. And I guess Palestinians also have to believe in Zionism. And if you fight back, if you're Hamas, if you're not Hamas, you'll get labeled Hamas. And that's what the whole issue is. This isn't an issue about being anti-Semitic or not. This is an issue of, is Zionism something that's beneficial, not only to the Palestinians, but to the world. And we see it's only beneficial to the Western societies that use Israel as a home base in the Middle East. So anyway, they go on, and Claudine Gay she's forced to resign now. She'll resign from the president position, but she'll still work for Harvard as a faculty member. That was an interesting thing about this. Now, what happens is they come down with plagiarism. I'm not going to get into the plagiarism because what you see from the video is that they were already telling her to resign. So after former President Gay resigns, this is what Congresswoman Elise Stefanik had. Stefanik's statement on long overdue resignation of Harvard president. I will always deliver results. The resignation of Harvard's anti-Semitic, notice she put anti-Semitic before plagiarism. Anti-Semitic plagiarist president is long overdue. Claudine gave morally bankrupt answers to my question, made history as the most viewed congressional testimony in the history of the U.S., Congress. Her answers were absolutely pathetic and devoid of the moral leadership and academic integrity required of the president of Harvard. This is just the beginning of what will be the greatest scandal of any college, university in history. Our robust congressional investigation will continue to move forward to expose the rot in our most prestigious higher education institute and deliver accountability to the American people. Even in her statements, she comes out swinging from the very beginning. This is that, we put people in these programs and they don't want to capitulate to what we want them to say. If we say support neo-Confederates, we want you to support neo-Confederates. If we say support Zionists, we want you to support Zionists and whatever Zionism has to bring. Now, this just didn't start by the Congresswoman. This actually, and for anybody that's been following this story, this actually has roots a little bit deeper. And that's why I say it has nothing to do with plagiarism. Here's a story by Christopher Rufo, right? And he's the one that kind of mastermind or taking credit for masterminding this thing. Here's an article by the Politico. And they sat down with this conservative, and they call him a mastermind, behind Claudine's gay ouster. And what you see, this is him in the middle. And what you see in this article is that, he's taking a victory lap on all of this. And he's saying, this isn't just about, this isn't about, being anti-Semitic, as he put it, or plagiarism. This is about DEI. And he believes that Claudine Gay should have never been in this position. And this whole article is about him taking a victory lap. I'll just read some of it. It says, what does it mean various degrees of communication and coordination have you been actively working together? And he says, some people I speak to a little bit more frequently, some people a little less frequently. But my job as a journalist, and even more so as an activist, is to know the political conditions, to understand and develop relationships with all of the political actors, and then to work as hard as I can so that they're successful in achieving their individual goals, but also to accomplish the shared goals, which was to topple the president of Harvard University. See, they were going to look for anything to topple this woman. He goes on in this article to give his strategy, right? And how he worked with the left and how him and the left came together. And he kind of like bullied the left, which they always do when the right wing wants the left to do something, they'll lean on them, right? And he says, I've run the same playbook on critical race theory, on gender ideology, on DEI bureaucracy. For the time being, given the structure of our institutions, this is a universal strategy that can be applied by the right to most issues. I think that we've demonstrated that it can be successful. This is the same person that's behind the scenes trying to get President Donald Trump back, or former President Donald Trump back in the office. They asked him, why do you think you can be so open about your strategy and still have it work? Why don't you feel like you need to be covert about it? And he says, firstly and mostly simply because I'm telling the truth. And the truth has an inherent and innate power. I believe that it is propagated correctly. It has the power to defeat lies. The reason I have announced my strategy in advance is both to demoralize my opponents, and certainly does a good job at that, but also to teach my potential friends and allies how the game works. So he's trying to teach other white supremacists this same approach. And he's saying, hey, whatever is not good for the white populace, we can destroy if you use these. How much credit do you think you deserve for Gay's resignation? And this is when he kind of gives you like the full scorched earth strategy that they use to find whatever they could and just pile up on that and get her to resign. And he says, I've learned that it never hurts to take the credit because sometimes people don't give it to you. But this really was a team effort. Yeah, we understand white supremacy is a team effort that involved three primary points of leverage. First was the narrative leverage. This was done primarily by me, right? So he came up with the whole plagiarism thing and held her to a higher scrutiny than other presidents has held. Christopher Brunette and Aaron Siberium. Second was the financial leverage, which led to Bill Ackman and other Harvard donors. And finally, there was the political leverage, which was really led by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, masterful performance with Claudine Gay at her hearing. When you put those three elements together, narrative, financial, and political pressures, and you squeeze hard enough, you see the results that we got today, which was the resignation of America's most powerful academic leader. I think that I think this result speaks for itself. And I hope now you guys see what I'm talking about. It's funny because white America has this advantage, not only an economic advantage, but an advantage in building institutions that they run. And they can see forth that these institutions is ran how they wanted to run. Institutions teach behavior. And what they're saying is we're going to teach Zionism in our behavior. We're going to teach whatever we want to teach that furthers our cause of white supremacy. I don't want people to think this is about plagiarism. And there is some accusations of plagiarism on Claudine's gay part, and I'm not fully in defense of her being Harvard president. I thought that position should have went to an American freedman. But this is not how you do it. This is not how you get somebody out. And he's telling you, what white America wants, white America gets. So what does this mean when it comes for other issues like reparations and things of that nature, things that uplift the American freedman community? I just want people to think about that. These people have their resource. When we talk about the racial wealth gap, we have to understand that they just don't have a boatload of money. No, they actually use this money to keep the pecking order in order. They use this money to get people, now you kind of understand why somebody like Floyd Mayweather would take the position he took initially, why somebody like LeBron James would come out with the statement he took. Claudine Gay and the MIT professor and the Penn professor, they condemn Hamas, but they didn't fold to the pressures of Zionists like white supremacists wanted them to do. And therefore, they are now feeling the full wrath of what white America has, what elite white America has. But, I just wanted to come to you guys today to get y'all to understand, this isn't about plagiarism. This is about folding to the pressures of white supremacy. And what you see here is that with this racial wealth gap that white America has amassed, they use it to be able to force upon other people to get what white supremacists want. Right? So I appreciate you guys for watching today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comment section. Thanks.